So the building that we're in right now dates back to the 1700s, but it's still in use today, right?
Yes, that is correct. It's in use today as a church. There are actually masses that happen here that are run by the Archdiocese of San Antonio. They happen several times a week at this and all of the missions. So both Concepcion, San Jose, Espada, and Mission San Juan have active masses and active parishes.
So, I mean, and the masses that happen here would be similar to anything that would happen anywhere else in the country, except it's in a, 300 and something year old building with insanely good acoustics.
Yes, you're exactly right. It'd be the same as most other Catholic churches around the country. The difference is that some of these churches will actually have mariachi masses and masses in Latin. So there is a little bit more local flavor, as well as some more unique opportunities, both for visitors and regular parishioners alike.
Now, Matthew, who's maintaining this building? I see that there's some repairs that have been done and are still being done. Who's in charge of that?
That's a great question. In the United States, we have a separation of church and state. And so even though this is part of the National Park Service, and the grounds and the outlying buildings are managed by the National Park Service, the actual churches themselves as an actual parish are managed by the Archdiocese of San Antonio.
And so when it comes time to, because even as we look around the room, I know it's tricky to try and portray this for you on the radio, but I mean, there are patches where, visibly there's obviously something different going on with, for example, the paint or the plaster, or what's the deal with that? What's happening in those spots in this building?
What's happening there is you actually have the original frescoes, the original plaster, and in some areas where it was looking very good, it was left there in its original condition. And that's also useful as a template, so that as the rest of the building was repaired and modernized and things, they can use those exact same color palettes, those exact same patterns as they work on the rest of the building to match, just so even though it may have been restored in the last 5 or 6 years, it looks as close as possible to the 1700s when it was originally constructed.
Now, I'm sure here in Texas, when you say the missions, people know, but to the listeners back in Canada, this is all unique. Can you give us an overview of what are the missions, how many are there, and what they're all about?
Well, this series of missions, there are currently 5 still around. So there's the Alamo, which is well known, and then Concepcion, San Jose, San Juan, and the Mission Espada that are all in the chain. These missions were, when the Spanish came to the New World, it was their outposts. They, in some ways, were military fortifications. There were cultural centers. There were trading posts. And most importantly, they were religious centers. All these missions were churches. The Franciscan friars were the ones that set them up. And so, they were really a transitional period of European settlement into the New World. There's folks who had lived here, humans who had occupied the San Antonio River system for tens of thousands of years before the Spanish got here. But really, when the Spanish got here, it really changed the lifestyle, and it was a clash of cultures that gave rise to what we see today as the city of San Antonio.
So what would you say is the biggest challenge for sites like this? Is it funding? Is it preservation? Is it technology? Is it a mishmash of all those three, or is there something that jumps out that if we had one, pardon the pun, but mission for the mission, it would be to achieve X?
I think the biggest issue for the missions is kind of, as you mentioned, the contrast between getting folks here and providing experiences that are modern and technologically advanced for younger generations, while also preserving something that's 300 years old. Trying to hit all those bases and increase the knowledge and increase the interpretation and the information, while at the same time paying homage and respect to what's here and the folks who are here and the types of places that these are.
So trying to appeal with a 300-something-year-old building to the iPad generation.
That's right. That would be a significant challenge. But I think, as y'all found when y'all came here, just being inside and looking around and hearing the acoustics and seeing the symbols that are around you and thinking about, wow, this has been here for this long, and all the thousands of people that have come through these doors and gotten the chill bumps just like you did. It speaks for itself. The issue is getting people through the front door. That's the hard part, is appealing.
Well, I bet for Sunday service, I'm sure that they never have a problem filling this up, because I bet there's not an empty seat in the house here for something like that, correct?
Yes, they're very popular.
Yeah.
And not only for visitors, but then also, they have very active local parishes. And the folks who are going to these churches today, their families have lived in these neighborhoods or date their heritage back to the missions. Their families can trace their mission lineage back to the 1700s. Lots of local community have stayed here, and they take very good pride and have a lot of respect and admiration for their heritage, for the city, and for these missions. They can trace their heritage back 300 years.
Now, you're a guy who knows the missions and the surrounding area and the importance of all. Do you have like a nugget of your own that you're especially proud of with any of this? Like something that you almost point to as you're walking through, and you're making sure when you're doing something like this, walking people like us through, the one little thing that you want to make sure everybody sees?
I think one thing is it's not seen. It's very hard for people to see, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes cooperation that goes on with a lot of different parties. You know, we mentioned the separation of church and state between the National Park Service and the Archdiocese. When you're walking around on the grounds, you don't see that invisible line. It's a seamless transition. As you're going from the churches to the river trails, and maybe you're riding a bike or walking, you may pass through city property, county property, river authority property, private property, Archdiocese. You know, there may be 10 entities that you're crossing. You know, over this church, there's probably 5 or 6 entities that have a special interest, whether it's a Historic Commission, UNESCO, World Heritage Site groups. Everybody has an interest, but everybody works very well together to keep these things in tip-top condition for the community and for the world.
You know, the gentleman we spoke to earlier, I guess what I want to say is everybody takes such pride in sharing the information and the history here. Everybody, doesn't matter who you are, the pride is there. So I think it's really cool to get the history and different insight from different individuals about this church, including yourself, of course.
Oh, thank you very much. And San Antonio is a very prideful community. We have a lot to be happy about, and we invite anybody in Toronto or anywhere else in Canada or anywhere else in the world to come on by, drink a margarita, take a ride on a river barge, have a good time, and come celebrate our culture and our history with us.